Welcome to the ADM podcast, where we talk property acquisition, development, management, and everything in between. Useful strategies, guidance, and compliance best practices for UK landlords with a sprinkle of personal development along the way. Hope you enjoy, subscribe, and share. Hello and welcome. So, in today's show, what are we going to talk about? We are talking how to market your HMO rooms. So if you're a landlord that is considering purchasing or setting up a HMO, a home of multiple occupancy, um, this is specifically going to talk about the dynamic between marketing your HMO property and some of the slight differences between HMO and a traditional vanilla buy-to-let property. So if you've rented out properties before but never a HMO, this might be useful. If you're already letting HMOs, but you want to enhance your process slightly, again, this may be useful to you. So let's jump into it, and let's start off with that brief comparison. So with a traditional vanilla buy-to-let, platforms is quite an interesting dynamic. So if you think where's the main location tenants go to when looking for a property, so they might jump on Google or search engine of choice and just do a quick research, rental properties. And if you just do that now, what you'll primarily find, if you're in the UK, assuming, is websites such as Zoopla and Rightmove. So these are platforms that lots of property agents use um, to post adverts for properties, and obviously sell properties as well. But these platforms are traditionally the main locations potential tenants will go. So these potential tenants will be, families, couples, maybe friends that want to share a property together, and also single tenants as well, who want to take over entire property. So don't get me wrong, these platforms are starting to include functionality around, potential shared properties. However, traditionally their bread and butter is rental properties, and again, the dynamic being slightly different. It's traditionally agents that utilize these platforms. So landlords will go to agents, their local estate agent. Local estate agent will be in charge of coming up with the photos, coming up with the advert details, putting the advert on said website, said marketing platform, and managing the kind of potential viewings and inquiries around said property, obviously at a fee. Now, your traditional HMO landlord operates quite differently. So generally, HMO landlords, especially on the smaller scale, if you've only got 1, 2, 3 properties, you'll try and manage it yourself. You don't necessarily need to leverage an agent. And to that extent, it will be yourself that is setting up the advert, managing the viewings and so on. But also, in terms of the expectations of the tenant, they're not necessarily looking to take over the entirety of the property. They're looking to take a single room. So when it comes to their Google search or search engine of choice, they're more focused on shared rooms or shared property. So if you do a search for that, you'll find that it's quite different in terms of the results. And hence, that's something to be aware of as a landlord, because you need to know where your potential clients, your potential tenants are going to be hanging out in terms of looking for rooms. So I say all of that to say, my go-to location, go-to marketing platform for letting my HMO properties, of which I've been doing since 2013, 2014 maybe. So, 10, coming up to 10 years now, is a website called spareroom.com. Now, spareroom.com is different in terms of its functionality, the likes of Zoopla and Rightmove, primarily in the sense that it's not just a location for tenants. Actually, landlords utilize this platform to search on tenants as well. So we'll talk a little bit about how that functionality works. But ultimately, what the platform allows you to do, or allows, is for tenants to create a profile about themselves. And in doing so, they can stipulate information of the sorts of things that they are looking for. So, for example, if they are, they're not specifically looking for an exact house, but they're open to a certain area, or they're open to a selection of postcodes, they can put that information in. They may only be considering properties that have an ensuite. They may be only considering properties that are vegetarian only or female only homes, or within a certain budgetary range, or with certain terms, minimum stay of 12 months, or it might be a short stay. They only want to stay for a maximum of 3 months. So all of this information can be stipulated by the tenant as part of when they are creating their profile. So that's super useful because ultimately landlords will be able to search for that and interact. And we'll talk a little about that as well. Um, and then obviously the second component is for landlords to create their profile. Now their profile isn't actually about them. Don't worry, you don't have to promote yourself. Um, However, your advert will be created based on your property entity. And that will obviously have the details about your rooms, which we'll get into now. So you're now subscribed to spareroom.com. So actually, let's talk a little bit about what the costs associated to that are. So generally, the way it works on spareroom.com, which is again slightly different to other platforms, instead of paying per advert, what you can do is you can pay for a monthly subscription. So no, back in the day, and these are the good old days, you used to be able to get the premium subscription for around £29. I think the price at the moment, and again, I don't know if this is the highest end subscription, but definitely the one that I'm utilizing at the moment and gives me the best benefit is around £69 a month. Now, bear in mind that £69 a month, regardless of whether you're advertising a room or not. So it really is a platform um, for landlords that are managing multiple properties and potentially multiple adverts throughout the year. If you've only got a single room that you're letting, and generally it's let for 12 months of the year, there's probably no need for you to be paying for the platform for 12 months. So again, you can stop and start your subscription. There's no issue with that necessarily. However, it's just something to bear in mind. So you are paying a monthly cost to essentially be on this marketing platform. And there are different levels in terms of what functionality you have access to. But as I say, the premium one generally allows you to do a couple of things. It allows you to directly interact with tenants, which again is useful because you can search for them based on their profile. But also it allows you to have multiple adverts and multiple photos per advert. So again, just additional functionality. But jump onto the platform, explore what options they have, what subscription works best for you. I'm sure there's some Black Friday deals or promo codes or free trials. All of that stuff should be explored. I've not been a new customer to Spare Room for many years, so I don't know exactly what the offering is on that side. But it's definitely worth exploring what kind of discounts they potentially offer for new users. So now let's jump into the core functionality and what information you need to be putting on your advert. So definitely what I recommend as a core principle is, as much as the platform allows you to have a single advert for a property and to give details about each room within that, I definitely recommend, especially if you've got the premium version, which allows you to have multiple adverts up at once, create an advert per room that you are advertising. So especially, let's say you've just finished developing a new property, you've got your HMO license in place, but you've now got 4 completely empty rooms. You could create a single advert for them, or do what I say, which is definitely what I recommend is create 4 individual adverts. Now, they will be focused on the specific specification of each of those rooms. So, for example, one room may be a single bed. So that will be promoting the single bed price. It will also, potentially mention single bed in the title, and the details that you'll put in that advert will be focused on the sorts of information a tenant looking for a single bed room may ask. Now, those are very different questions to, for example, a room which is en suite, completely different price range. The ensuite room may have different requirements in terms of is it just a sink, is it a full bathroom, is it partially shared, is it solely owned by the occupant of the room. So again, having the ability to have focused adverts per room is super useful. Now, don't get me wrong, spareroom.com probably doesn't want you to spam, the duplicates of the same advert on there. However, if I think, as long as you can showcase the difference between the rooms that you're promoting, I definitely would recommend having different adverts per room. So let's jump into, now you've got your profile set up, you've got 2 or 3 kind of templates of the sorts of your adverts that you're going to create. So what information do you need to include on there? So the first thing is your photos. The first thing to consider is your photos. And again, the advantage of having advert specific per room is that you can have photo specific per advert as well. So what does that mean? Have, and again, a useful kind of tip to mention here, which is slightly different to other platforms, is there is a cap of around 9 photos per advert. So what I would suggest is, in terms of your photos, 4 or 5 of the property itself. Now, that sounds like quite a lot, but ultimately you want to show one from outside, you want to show one from inside, maybe one of the garden, one of the communal areas, one of the bathroom, the shared bathroom, um, one of the storage area that's included. You can quite quickly run out of 4 or 5 pictures when that's all that you've got. But also, it's worth having the additional photos, 2 or 3, so within your cap of 9, 2 or 3 specific to the room. So, to get the best angle, sometimes it's worth having almost a 360 shot, one from each corner. Maybe you want one from being inside the room, one from outside. If you've got kind of walk-in wardrobes or hidden storage areas, then again, do one photo with it open, one photo with it closed, so on and so forth. It really paints a picture of the specifics of that room, because very often, again, what tenants are looking for with a HMO is slightly different to a property. So when you're renting a property, you're interested in the entirety of the house. A lot of the time, and I'd say maybe 80% is the house and 20% is the bedroom. And obviously for a HMO, it's literally the opposite. So probably 80% is just the room that you're going to be living in. And some tenants, when they rent HMO properties, will literally just live in their room. And I'd even say more than 80% of the time, they will spend in their room alone, not even utilizing the communal areas. And all they really care about in terms of those communal areas, generally, is it kept clean and is it functional? Um, so that's just something to consider in terms of the volume of photos and information you put around the room itself. So in terms of the information to include in the advert, so this is very similar to what you would include in your traditional buy-to-let vanilla Zoopla advert or Rightmove advert. Information around the house layout, what furniture is included, because obviously, most HMOs, I'd say all HMOs, are fully furnished, it means slightly different. Where it starts to get a little bit different is you want to be talking about the bills that you include. So traditionally with HMOs, you will be including bills as part of the tenancy agreement. So which bills are included? I generally include all bills. It's quite complex to be doing partial bills and non-partial bills. But nevertheless, you want to actually stipulate them. Tell the tenant specifically what you will be covering as a landlord. Also, tell them about the other tenants that are in the property. So, don't give away names and personal details, but the dynamic of the house, because they're going to be having to live with these people, and it's not always the case that tenants can actually meet their other or fellow housemates prior to moving in or as part of the viewing. So, the more information you can provide in this space, especially if it's a tenant looking for to live with certain people of a certain age group or a certain sex or certain open-mindedness to certain lifestyles, then if that is the case, then put that in your advert. Um, Next part really around the local amenities. So this is pretty bread and butter stuff really. But what I like to do to kind of bring to life the living experience is not just to say, the things that are in the area like Morrison's and gym and this and that, but the actual walking distances or travel distances. So, 2-minute walk from closest bus stop, 5-minute walk to local library, 10-minute walk to Morrison's, 10 minutes on the bike to X, 15-minute drive to Y. I think it's quite a useful technique to kind of, as I say, bring to life the actual living experience of the tenant, especially where a lot of times for spare, for adverts for tenants that are looking on spareroom.com, they may be looking at areas, or they might be open to areas that they've never lived in before. Again, this is something slightly different to your kind of vanilla buy to let. Traditionally, if you're taking on an apartment or a house, you'll probably know the area to quite a detailed level, or at least explore the area. In general, you'll just go and check out the area. Whereas if you're a student, you've just finished uni, or you just got a new job in Birmingham, for example, you may not get a chance to explore Birmingham before you actually get a chance to actually have to be looking at rooms and securing viewings there. So the more information you can provide and bring to light what that living experience will be like for the tenant, I think the better. So at this stage now, you've got your advert set up, you've got your profile set up, you've got your photos sorted, you've got some good information around the property, around the tenants, around the room. But something that you should also consider is yourself as the landlord. So as much as don't get, I mentioned before, you don't have to have your own profile on here, or you can't have your own profile on here, and you've not got in any way, tell your life story. However, I think it is important for you to kind of articulate. This is definitely a technique I use. Articulate to the potential tenants your own credibility. So, what does that mean? It means, in the best of your ability, try and come across professionally and competent in your communications. There's no kind. Even if tenants speak to you in slang, or have poor grammar, I definitely would treat it such like you're writing a professional email or work related communication in terms of how you communicate. And especially if you're a younger landlord, you may only be 25, and be letting out rooms to people that are older than you. The worst thing is for you to come across in any way childish or incompetent. So, especially in your written communications, come across as professional as possible, and that shows your credibility. But also talk about your credibility. So if you have been managing properties for 10 years, mention that. If you are NRLA accredited, mention that. If you've got a HMO license in place for the property and you follow all the guidelines, and mention that. Talk about how you follow the right policy for setting up deposits. Talk about that you've got all the certification in place for the gas safety, fire safety, emergency lighting, so on and so forth. So you bring to life, and you know, not in paragraphs worth of information, but kind of bullet point where you are compliant and competent. Because sometimes that can be the deal breaker between two rooms. It can be actually the dynamic of the landlord. So I think there's a lot to be said for you to come across in a good way to your potential tenant as well. Also, to be honest, is a way for you to gauge the tenant. So if you act and communicate in a certain way and articulate things in a certain way, but then how the tenant speaks and interacts with you is not to your taste, then obviously that is someone you can vet out of your potential tenant pool quite quickly. So then the final tip really then is to be proactive as a communicator. So as I said at the start, you can directly search for tenants, you can interact with them directly, based on their requirements. That's a super useful piece of functionality. Now, I say this and I do believe this. I don't know if this is actually true, but I'd like to think it is, because it definitely seems to be the way it works for me. So the more proactive you are on the platform, the better. So I don't know if it's the same as social media with the whole algorithm and kind of being rewarded for being responsive quickly and so on. But I say all of it to say, like, if I put an advert up and I don't get a chance to respond to the plethora of messages, the additional new messages kind of starts to dry up because I've not interacted with any of the messages from before. I've not been proactive on the platform. Where I'm being proactive and logging in each day and messaging as many tenants as I can proactively, but also responding to tenants that are messaging me, I find that steady flow of inquiries stays quite consistent. So as I say, it could just be my hoodoo beliefs, but I definitely recommend being more proactive on the platform. I would say send out 10, 15, 20 messages per day as kind of prospecting messages. I'm sure spareroom.com doesn't want you to be spamming any more than that. And in reality, you should be searching for tenants that suit you, not just contacting anyone that's on the platform. So having a focused search, looking at tenants' profiles briefly, and qualifying whether it's even worth contacting them is important as well. You don't want to be contacting people for them to say, well, did you not read my profile? You can see that I have a dog and your property doesn't allow pets, for example, which is a grey area because I know there's some changes in the in the animal and pet space. But putting that to the side, you get my point. Make sure you only contact people that qualify to meet your requirements, because otherwise it's a waste of time having that conversation with anyone that doesn't. So be super proactive. Make sure you're prospecting at quite a high level, 10, 15, 20 messages per day, and make sure you're responding within 24 hours, I'd say, to any um, messages you receive. Now, one thing I would say about spareroom.com, and I don't know if this is changing in the future, um, or maybe it's functionality I've not seen on the platform but exists in some way, is ultimately the viewing side of things, as in like the scheduling of viewings. That functionality doesn't exist, and I have seen it on other platforms, to be honest. But as I say, I've never spent enough time on other platforms to really get to grips with how useful their other tools are. Um, but yeah, that's just something it's just something worth knowing. When you start scheduling viewings, you just have to do it manually or use a different piece of software to do that. I mean, I just stick it in a notebook or on OneNote on my laptop, and either schedule it for myself to do viewings, or obviously you can schedule for your existing tenants to support on that front as well. So yeah, that's today's episode. That is how to market your HMO rooms. I really hope it's been useful. Make sure you check out my other pages, social media content, some really useful stuff on there in terms of property insight and landlord guidance. And as always, really appreciate you listening. Make sure you interact, as I say, on the social media, and look forward to speaking again soon.